In this video, I'll discuss about components. Components are one of the core concepts of React application. Components represent part of web application. A typical website built with React might be made of several different components, where each component might have self-contained section of content. For example, nav bar of this site might be a component, top bar might be a component, and lockout button might be component, and this article might be component. Also, the new customer form might be a component. Finally, one component contains every other nested component. This component is root component, usually name is app component. Each of these components represent entire React application. If I define React component is a JavaScript function, contain markup, logic, and CSS that React renders in the browser. It has a name like HTML element, and we can use this component using this name like HTML tag name, and this component is reusable. For example, you can create a submit button component, and you can name it submit button, and this component encapsulates markup logic and CSS, and you can reuse every form of your application. Components code are written in JavaScript file, what is called JSX. In the last video, I discussed JSX. Let's recapitulate app component. This is app component. Last time we saw this is the root component of this application. This component code inside app.js file, which is JavaScript file. It's the name of this component. Here is the logic of this component written in JavaScript, and here is the markup of this component. So basically this component composed of a JavaScript code and a markup. We have used this component inside the index.js. Here it is, like an HTML tag. So far we saw components are code written in JavaScript file. What will be component code look like? That depends on component types. There are two types of component. One is functional component. Functional component is simply a JavaScript function. It has return statement that returns HTML. React renders that HTML in browser. For example, this app component is a functional component. It has a name app. It has a return statement that returns HTML of h1 followed by p tag and the image tag. And React renders that HTML in browser. Other component is a class component. It is a ES6 class, and it extends react.component class. It must have one render method that returns HTML, and React renders that HTML in browser. For example, this is a class component. It has the class keyword of ECMAScript6, and this is the name of the class component grid, and it extends react.component class, and it has a render method, and this method returns the HTML, and we can see them in browser. Let's summarize our discussion about components. Components are JavaScript code written in JavaScript file. It encapsulates logic and markup. We can reuse them like normal HTML element, and they are nested. Components are two types. One is functional component, Another one is class component. The next video I'll be discussing on what is functional component.